Nihongo. Japanese is known to be one of the hardest languages in the world, at least for native English speakers to speak, as stated right here by Language Hardness Scale. But is it really that hard to learn? About 2.5 years ago, I decided to start learning Japanese because I became really into Japanese culture, anime, manga, otaku shit. So I thought to myself, Japanese culture is really interesting. How should I go about learning Japanese? And of course, I went with the immerse myself and spend every waking minute reading, listening, or engaging in some form of the language or culture. So, me doing this decision, I decided to do the AJAT method of study. Now, AJAT stands for All Japanese All the Time, and unfortunately now the website is down. The only way that you can access the website now is to use a program called the Wayback Machine and just type in the address and go see for yourself if you want to go see that. Basically, the core fundamentals of AJAT were just exactly in the name. All Japanese, all the time, 24/7. And in my opinion, this method really works if you want to learn a language really fast. Immerse yourself in it 24/7. It's also completely insane, and you can't do it if you have a social life, but it works. Now, Japanese is extremely difficult for a number of reasons, but I think I can boil it down to 3 main ones. The first reason is the writing system. Now, you have 3 different writing systems in Japanese. You have hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Hiragana and katakana, you can learn pretty easily. Just you see it all the time, you read it all the time. Kanji is completely different. The way that I learned hiragana and katakana is I just kind of learned like half of them, and then I just read a bunch, and then if I didn't know one, then I just looked it up. That's basically how I learned those. Kanji, on the other hand, is completely different. It takes so insanely long because there are thousands of characters that look pretty much identical, and then even in those thousands of characters, some of them you can say multiple ways depending on the context of the sentence. Kanji is still extremely difficult for me. I can barely read it, and I just have to look it up every time I see something I don't know. The second reason why Japanese is so hard for native English speakers is the grammar is pretty backwards compared to in English. We use an SVO sentence structure. This just means the subject, verb, object. So I, the subject, am going, the verb, then to the store being the object. In Japanese, they use an SOV sentence structure. So in Japanese, the same sentence, I'm going to the store, would be I'm the store going, because they put the verb at the end of the sentence. And these verbs can also change the context of the sentence, like whether it's past, future, present tense, stuff like that. And also, depending on how you conjugate the verb, the politeness of the sentence changes too. If you're using the mas form or the normal dictionary, whatever form. Personally, I think that this is one of the easiest parts about Japanese grammar. I don't think it's really too complicated to imagine verbs going at the end of the sentence. I think the really hard part about Japanese grammar is that they have particles. What are particles, you might be asking yourself? Well, they're just these words you put in between other words that show stuff like object, time, movement, destination, existence, the topic of your sentence. Particles are extremely complicated, and I can't even begin to scratch the surface of what each individual particle means and the different variations you can use it in. And all you need to know for this video is that they're extremely complicated and kind of a nightmare. If you want to learn more about particles, I recommend watching this video by Yuko Sensei. Links in the description. She does a good job at showing you and explaining what particles mean and do. And if you want to learn basically any Japanese grammar, I highly recommend this channel, Japanese Ammo with Misa. She's made hundreds and hundreds of videos just detailing different Japanese grammar points, and I think it's a great help. She goes into great explanation about pretty much anything. Highly recommend her channel. The last point that I want to talk about is the way you actually speak in Japanese. Now, I'm differentiating the way you speak and the grammar here because The grammar tells you one thing, but the way you actually talk is completely different. I think probably the most important and the easiest to understand way what I mean by this is you drop basically all your words in Japanese. Like, for example, it's very rare that you actually use the word I, watashi, or boku, or whatever you want to use for I. You don't say I a lot of the time because there's no reason to. If you're talking about you going to the store, you're not telling somebody to go to the store, because then that changes the words that you use. If you're saying that I went to the store, then it's obvious you're talking about you. You're not saying you went to the store, because then that would be a question. Then that would change the way that you say the sentence. Another example would be like if you want to say you like something, like you could say I like flowers, or hana ga suki desu. Now, I didn't say watashi or boku or any form of I because I'm just saying to like flowers. It's obvious that I'm talking about me because I'm not making it a question. If I made it a question to you, I would say hana ga suki desu ka? Obviously, I'm not questioning myself whether I like flowers. I'm asking you the question if you like flowers, because you're asking a question to somebody else. We can also go like a little bit deeper into this where we can drop the particle, the ga particle in this too. Also, this brings up another point. You don't want to say you in Japanese, because that can be seen as extremely disrespectful. You just want to say the question, or you want to say the person's name that you're talking to. You wouldn't say omae wa hana ga suki desu ka? Because that could just sound really offensive. That could just be really disrespectful to someone to refer to them as omae. So basically, you got 3 different alphabets you have to learn, one of them being 50,000 characters long. Extremely complicated grammar, basically the exact opposite grammar that you would use in English. And you have to drop a lot of words for you to sound like a normal person. And a lot of those words that you would drop are words like I, me, you. Are you starting to understand why Japanese is so hard and why so many people say you need 2,400 classroom hours for you to get to a really good level of Japanese? Now, I'm in no way trying to scare people away from learning Japanese. If you want to learn Japanese, I highly recommend it. I think everybody should be speaking at least one other language. Japanese is really hard, but it's also really rewarding. If you like Japanese culture, then it can be extremely rewarding and unlock so many possibilities for you. Even though I'm talking about how hard Japanese is to learn in this video and how complicated it can be at times, I still think even though I made it seem really hard in this video to learn Japanese, it's really not as complicated as everyone makes it out to be. Yes, it is hard, it's a headache, but really, it is extremely rewarding. Realistically, the hardest part is the beginner phase. I would say once you know your first 1,000 words, it gets exponentially easier. You can actually read more content that you yourself are interested in and pick up the language really fast. All I'm trying to say though is that even though it can be hard at times, that it can give you a headache at times, learning another language is worth it. And hey, if you want to learn the type of Japanese that real Japanese people speak, because textbooks and apps don't teach you the real life Japanese, go check out Yuda. Also, just one more thing before I go. I'm going to have a link to every channel down in the description that helped me on my Japanese journey, and every website that I've used too, to maybe help you guys out if you need help with something. Alright, thanks all. Bye.